and since there will be no lecture succeeding my lecture, we can use that time kahit kaunting extension. Okay, so I will be entertaining your questions after my lecture. So we have a lot of time actually. So, this lecture is very difficult because in trying to explain the the things about ultrasound, it is applicable in the detection of some pathologic abnormalities in obstetrics. And therefore, hindi natin maiiwasan na mag-mention ng mga abnormalities, which is quite unfair na i-expect kong alam ninyo kasi hindi pa naman kayo nanggagaling doon. Okay? So, please bear with me. Kapag merong mga terms or may mga conditions na abnormal, I'll try to briefly explain so that you can see already you can understand the applicability of ultrasound in these situations. After all, ultrasound is like a stethoscope for the cardiologist. So we try to set our foot forward, advance for some conditions that we expect to be abnormal during pregnancy. So please bear with me kasi medyo kailangan i-explain yung ibang terminology. So kung may mga questions kayo, just hold on and we will just be discussing all your questions later on. So let me share my slides. Can you see my slide?
Yes po, Doc.
Okay, so I will be turning off my video because it might compete with my signal. So now, hindi ko kayo nakikita. So bahala kayo. It's up to you if you want to sleep or you want to go out or whatever. This is something that you are already adult learners. So bahala na kayo how you would want to, if you want to stay on or what. Okay? So we will be starting the lecture now. So today we will be talking about obstetric imaging, and we are talking actually about ultrasound and how it can help in the fetal surveillance or the antenatal examination of the baby who are bound to be problematic later on. So, and I will be discussing it in the point of view of a primary health physician. What you should know as a primary health physician regarding OB ultrasound. So, this is how we will do it. My objectives is to introduce the wonders of ultrasound to you and teach you how to interpret basic ultrasound pictures and results. This will help you to diagnose and manage certain obstetric conditions at the primary health level of care. Also, I would like to teach you to identify abnormal ultrasound findings in order to help you stratify patients who will be needing referral to the specialists. I will also introduce some nice to know about obstetric ultrasound and its correlation to the clinical situations in order for you to better understand and act on certain obstetric conditions when and where specialist is not readily reachable in the community. So paano kung wala kayong pagre-referan? Okay? So at least meron na kayong idea on how to go about all these things. So will be the outline of my lecture. We will try to define terms, and I will be giving you the purposes of obstetric imaging and fetal surveillance in the first trimester. Bakit ba tayo nag-ultrasound in the first 3 months of pregnancy? Bakit ba tayo nag-ultrasound in the latter part of the pregnancy? And I will tell you also some special ultrasound procedures that we are also using. And definitely you should know if you are handling a primary health care level of institution. So let's try to define transvaginal ultrasound. So what is transvaginal ultrasound? This is an ultrasound wherein you use a transvaginal probe. And this is like the high power view of a microscope, wherein if you put your ultrasound here, what you will be getting is a focused evaluation of small structures, meaning you see small structure clearly, but you have limited range of view. Parang ang nakikita mo yung focus area lang. The larger area around that focus area you cannot see. So, saan ginagamit ito? This is used to evaluate smaller structures like in the first trimester when we are dealing and evaluating small embryo or fetus. And in gynecologic ultrasound, we see the pelvic structures. We also try to focus on the uterus, on the ovaries, and small masses. Meaning, naka-focus ka sa isang area, but your view is clear. Okay, so that's transvaginal ultrasound. What about transabdominal ultrasound? So you will see here that here it's like the low power view of the microscope. It's like a bird's eye view wherein you see wide range of the view but less focus. Meaning hindi masyadong clear yung makikita nyo sa ilalim. Pero mas malawak yung nakikita ninyo. And the utility is to look at the large pelvic masses and in the second and third trimester pregnancy wherein you are dealing with a bigger fetus. For example, if your baby is in the third trimester already, term baby, if you will be doing transvaginal ultrasound and the baby is in cephalic presentation, what you could only see is the head, nothing else, because you are just focusing on the area of the head. Therefore, that is the difference between transvaginal and transabdominal ultrasound. So what about congenital anomaly scan? So this is a special form of ultrasound wherein we try to look at the organ by organ evaluation of fetal structures to evaluate for possible congenital anomaly. That's why it's called congenital anomaly scan, meaning we want to look into the fetus and try to detect kung meron bang abnormality in one or two organ systems. Why is it done? We're doing this in order to have a prenatal assessment of possible abnormality. And therefore, when we, unfortunately, we see an abnormality, this will guide us in the prognostication and management and counseling. For example, you see a fatal abnormality in the fetus, we can tell the mother that this is what we expect. The baby will not be alive upon delivery, etc., etc. So everything will be managed accordingly. So who are the ones in whom congenital anomaly scan is done? This is done among high-risk pregnant patients. Older, gravida, because pag ikaw ay matanda na, kasing tanda mo yung egg. And therefore, it is prone to some abnormalities because of senescence. Those with a previous family or past history of pregnancies with congenital anomalies, those with suspicious abnormality on routine scan, those mothers who have maternal diabetes because hyperglycemia itself is teratogenic, those with exposure to teratogens or infections, and most of the time, personal choice of the mother and the family. So when should we do this? Universally, it is recommended to be done at 18 to 20 weeks, but in our country, the standardization of the Society of Ultrasound pegged it at 24 to 26 weeks. What is the reason behind this difference? Because universally, in other countries wherein abortion is legal, if you see a baby who is anomalous, can be aborted legally, and their time to abort the baby is until 20 weeks. And therefore, they should know the abnormality before the time when legal abortion is still can be done. Kasi pag nakita nila yung abnormality at 24 weeks, hindi na nila pwedeng i-abort yon. And our country it's an entirely different situation because we are just doing congenital anomaly scan just to be prepared, just to counsel the parents, but no termination of pregnancy. And we do it at a later age of gestation because we see the structures more clearly and more developed as compared to 18 to 20 weeks. So wag kayong magugulat kung makikita nyo sa universal recommendation, it's 18 to 20, but locally it's 24 to 26 weeks. So what about fetal 2D echocardiography? Like in adults, we also do 2D echocardiography. Why do we do that in fetuses? So this is a targeted evaluation of the fetal heart wherein you can see the four chambers of the heart. This represents the ventricles and this represents the atria. And you could see blood flow inside the chambers of the heart. This is done not right and left. This is only done on indication. If the mother has comorbidities and there might be some abnormality that will be hitting the development of the heart. Those mothers who have maternal history of congenital heart disease, the mother herself has congenital anomaly because chances of the baby having it is in the range of 3 to 12%. And those with suspicious cardiac findings on routine scan. Meaning nagpa-ultrasound lang for gender determination tapos nakita tatlo lang yung chambers ng heart. So this baby is up for fetal 2D echocardiography so that we want to see what kind of abnormality this baby will have. What about 3D and 4D scan? So what is the difference between 2D, 3D, and 4D? As the name implies, 2D will only give you two dimensions, the longitudinal view and the transverse view. Whereas 3D will give you the third dimension, which is the coronal view. And 4D, you will see the moving fetus. So, it is a more vivid and defined, it will give you a more vivid and defined features of the fetus in 3D. And the difference in 3D, you are just having the still picture. It's a photograph, no? It's not moving. But when you say 4D, you just put on the mode for 4D and you will see the fetus moving. I will give you an example of that later. So ano ba yung katuturan nito? What is the medical advantage of doing 3D and 4D over 2D? This helps in the diagnosis of fetal congenital anomalies not well seen by 2D, like facial clefts, limb abnormality, and this is an exact example. You will see here a 2D picture na kailangan mo pang isipin, asan ba yung cleft lip dito? So if I will explain to you, this is the lower lip, this is the upper lip, and this is the nose, and you have a cleft lip here. But if you do it 3D, hindi nyo na kailangan mag-isip. Kitang-kita mo, biyak yung uso, no? So you don't have to imagine at all because you could already see. Here you could see different abnormalities in the extremities. This is very difficult to see in 2D ultrasound. Look at this. It's 2D. No? Parang hindi mo maintindihan. Whereas ito, you could see it's a claw hand. Definitely that's abnormal. There is also abnormality in the fingers. And you have club foot here. So in 3D, you don't need to imagine. You could see already. So this is a gender, a female, a male, and you could see vividly the face. No? Parang siya na mismo yung litrato ng baby paglabas. So this views the coronal section, which is not possible on 2D. That's why in gynecology, it can help in the diagnosis of congenital anomalies of the uterus like bicornuate, your septate, etc., as well as cornual pregnancy, abnormalities that cannot be seen in 2D because they can only be seen when you do the coronal section of the uterus. And this will be offered to you by 3D ultrasound. So this is 4D. So it is more or less a neuro exam in utero. You could see the baby moving. You could see the baby sticking out the tongue. And this you would see. And the application of this is that we could determine some abnormality in the movement of the baby, such that may stiff yung kanyang uh, paggalaw ng extremities, etc., etc. So you could see the baby real time in 4D ultrasound. So I'll repeat, 3D is just a photograph, while 4D is like a movie. It's a moving baby. Okay? So what about biophysical profile? So the biophysical profile is a test for fetal well-being. This will tell you whether the baby is well or is not well because he or she is hypoxic. And we call it biophysical profile because this evaluates the integrity of the fetal CNS, because the different parameters that we measure, like fetal tone, fetal breathing, gross body movements, non-stress tests, which I will discuss later. This is about the heart rate. All these things have their centers in the brain. The cardiac center and the breathing center, you will know, are all located in the brainstem, whereas the fetal tone and gross body movements are located in the cerebral cortex. And therefore, any abnormality in this biophysical profile will tell you that the brain is not properly functioning, probably because the brain is hypoxic. And the cardiovascular and the perfusion status by looking at the amniotic fluid volume. So I will try to explain to you in simpler and practical terms later on so that you will understand. So how do we score? It's an all or none phenomenon. If these different parameters are normal, you score the baby 2. Whereas if they do not follow or they do not satisfy the criteria for normality, you give it a score of 0. So the scoring is all or none. It's 2 or 0. And what is the indication? Pag nandun kayo sa clinic, kayo na yung doktor, sino-sino ba itong mga buntis na pagre-requestan ko ng biophysical profile? In all pregnancies in whom you suspect that there will be some form of fetal hypoxia, like mothers who have comorbidities like hypertension, diabetes, antiphospholipid antibody syndrome, those babies who are small because they are growth restricted, secondary to malnutrition, those mothers who are complaining na, Doktora, parang hindi gumagalaw yung baby ko. So you need to do that so that we try to interrogate whether the baby is really well or unwell. And those pregnancies with history of fetal death in utero, yung bigla na lang namatay yung baby sa loob ng tiyan. So bago mamatay ang baby, there should be some form of a warning, and the warning can be picked up by the biophysical profile. At this particular point in time, wherein hindi pa ito kasama sa inyong lessons, wag niyo na munang pahirapan yung sarili nyo to memorize about what is normal. It will come. Later on, nyo na lang yan intindihin. Basta ang importante, biophysical profile is a test for fetal well-being to test whether the baby's brain and the cardiovascular status is okay. Kasi pag lumabas na hindi okay, you need to intervene. You need to do whatever should be done in order to prevent the baby dying in utero. So that is biophysical profile. And all these things can be seen by ultrasound. Fetal tone, fetal breathing, gross body movements, and amniotic fluid volume can be seen by ultrasound. Non-stress test is a different instrument, which we will be talking about later. So, yung non-stress test, this is called cardiotocography or electronic fetal monitoring. Lagi kong sinasabi doon sa mga estudyante na yung cardiotocography or electronic fetal monitor, para lang yan ECG ng matandang tao. So parang ini-ECG mo yung baby. So this is non-stress test, And the purpose is to assess fetal heart reactivity with movements. 'Di ba dapat pag gumagalaw ang tao, dapat nag-a-accelerate or umi-increase yung heart rate. Dapat yun ang makita mo sa baby. And this is what is being tested by non-stress test. So let me just introduce to you the instrument. This is the electronic fetal monitor wherein you have tokodynamometer, nakakabit dito sa makina ng CTG, ipapatong mo siya dun sa tiyan ng nanay at the area of the fundus of the uterus so that it can pick up uterine contractions. You also have Doppler. Pupunta mo yan, di ba, sa loopholes nyo. When you feel the back, it should be where the heart rate should be. So, dun mo ilalagay ang Doppler. Then, pag pinatakbo mo yan, may lalabas na tracing sa papel. And every tracing, every pattern that will go out of this paper means something. So it's like in ECG, pag sinabing STT wave changes, may ischemia. So kung ano yung pattern na lalabas at ire-record na ibinibigay at napipick up nitong mga parts na ito, ay yun ang sinasabi ng baby. And we need to interpret this because this is how the baby is communicating with us. So let's talk about more about non-stress tests. So pag sinabi mong non-stress, walang stress. Ano ba yung stress? What we consider is stressor for the baby is uterine contractions. Every time the uterus contracts, the vessels are impinged, and therefore as there is some form of physiologic hypoxia. So this is the stress. But in NST, walang stress, walang contraction. So this is requested prior to term or labor to monitor the babies at high risk to have hypoxia or distress in utero, such as those who are prone to the development of hypoxia and who have the risk to die in utero, like those mothers having hypertension or diabetes, growth restricted, oligohydramnios, meaning kakaunti yung kanyang tubig dun sa loob, and there is a possibility that the cord can be compressed even with minor movement of the baby, and those with history of fetal death in previous pregnancy. So the principle of NST is that the woman is not in labor, as I've said, no uterine contraction, and therefore there is no stressor. So what we are testing against the heart rate is the fetal movement. And it is physiologic that in healthy fetus, fetal movement will elicit a reflex increase in fetal heart rate. The moment you see this, we call it a reactive NST, and therefore this baby's condition is reassuring. So if there will be no increase in fetal heart rate, wala, dead ma lang siya, flat yung trace, walang gumagalaw. This is suspicious for a non-reassuring pattern. Parang yung tao, kapag gumagalaw pero hindi tumataas yung heart rate niya, ay baka may problema yan sa puso, no? So this baby, a healthy baby, should follow a normal physiologic response. So this will guide us to manage these babies, whether we need to terminate the pregnancy prior to the death of that baby, because that means hypoxia. So the principle is that with fetal movement, there should be a physiologic increase in the heart rate. And this is a reactive NST. You see, when you hook the mother to the CTG, meron siyang pinipindot, no? Yung pinipindot niya, pipindutin niya yung kapag nararamdaman niyang gumagalaw ang baby. Pag gumalaw, nare-record yun as arrows. And therefore, this arrow signifying movement should always be associated with a rise or an increase in the fetal heart rate. So the moment you see this is a reactive NST. But if you see a baby and the mother can feel the movement pero dead malang yung heart rate, walang accelerations, that is a non-reactive NST, and you think there could be some abnormality, the baby might be sleeping, or the baby is having a suspicious hypoxia. So this is the principle behind non-stress testing. So this is reassuring, this is a suspicious or a non-reassuring test. So, what is this physiologic response? The physiogenesis behind reactive NST is that if the baby moves, there is a release of adrenaline. And adrenaline stimulates the sympathetic nervous system, which is important in fetal heart rate acceleration. Remember, your parasympathetic nervous system will decrease the heart rate, your sympathetic nervous system increases the heart rate. And therefore, if you stimulate the sympathetic nervous system, there should be an increase in the fetal heart rate, and therefore should be having an increase in fetal heart rate, or we call it acceleration. So this is how it appears. So non-stress test, which is reassuring, is that when the heart rate increases with every fetal movement perceived by the mother. So this is non-stress test to pick up babies who are prone to the development of hypoxia. So what about Doppler velocimetry? What is this? This is a high technology ultrasound wherein the principle is that the use of ultrasound waves is important to measure the velocity of blood flow within a vessel, whether maternal or fetal vessels we are interrogating. Therefore, this will give us the status of tissue perfusion. So what happens is that when you put the probe on the abdomen of the mother and you try to interrogate a vessel, this one is the middle cerebral artery. Okay, the brain, the vessel that supplies 80% of the cerebral cortex. What will happen is that when the sound waves passes through the blood flow, ibabato niya yan pabalik do sa program ng ultrasound, ipoprocess yan ng ultrasound at ibabalik niya as waveforms. And this waveforms is also the one which is being measured and calculated by the machine. And this will give us some numbers as far as indices are concerned. So it will give us high resistance or low resistance vessels. Remember, Doppler velocimetry measures velocity of the blood flow in the vessel, such that when, as I've said, when the sound waves enter, it will be thrown back as waveforms, and the machine will compute in numbers the resistance indices, and more often than not, we use pulsatility index as a measure of resistance, such that it will tell us if you have high PI, meaning mataas yung resistance. This means you have vasoconstriction and you have decreased tissue perfusion. But if the machine gives you low resistance, low PI, ibig sabihin, wala man lang kahindran-sindran sa flow ng vessel. Ibig sabihin, this vessel is vasodilated, walang obstruction, walang impedance, and therefore, this vessel is good, giving good tissue perfusion. So, saan siya useful? This is in the prediction of preeclampsia or hypertensive disorders in pregnancy, as I will tell you later on. And this is also for the monitoring and management of growth-restricted fetuses, which I will also discuss in brief to you later on. Just remember that Doppler velocimetry measures the velocity of blood flow in the vessel and therefore will tell us the perfusion status in the organ. Eh yung Doppler, anong ibig sabihin nun? Doppler is just the name of the discoverer of the technology, Christian Hans Doppler. So, yun lang. Pangalan lang yan ng discover ng technology. But the technology is actually the measurement of the velocity of blood flow within a vessel under interrogation in order to find out whether The vessel is vasoconstricted or vasodilated, and therefore, if there is a decrease or a good tissue perfusion, respectively. So let's now go to the different objectives of ultrasound. Bakit ba tayo nagre-request ng first trimester ultrasound? And since we are dealing with small baby, small embryo, small structures, what we will be requesting is a transvaginal ultrasound. Okay? So, bakit tayo nagre-request niyan? One, pumunta sa inyo yung patient, Doktora, positive po yung pregnancy test ko. Can you tell whether the patient's baby is alive or not? Just the pregnancy test? So you need ultrasound to determine viability. Pag minsan, mali yung age of gestation. Again, you will see the difference later on based on the documentation of the age of gestation. Where is the pregnancy located? Hindi porket positive ang pregnancy test, intrauterine yan. May mga pregnancy na naa-arrest yung kanilang pagpunta sa uterus and they are having ectopic pregnancy and most of them, it's tubal pregnancy. We also need to know how many fetuses are there. So it could be multifetal. We can also see abnormalities in the fetus or in the embryo as early as the first trimester, as I will try to explain and show to you, and also the possible presence of pelvic masses. So viability, this is what we call as M mode. We use M mode, meaning i-ultrasound natin, itatapat natin dun sa baby, makikita mo naman yung nag-flicker dun sa heart, and you just put on the M mode. M means motion mode. It determines the movement. And you will see here the heart rate. Okay? Then you just put one cursor here and one cursor here, and you will now be looking at the beats per minute. So this baby is alive with a fetal heart rate of 162 beats per minute. This baby, you have flat, no? Walang nagpi-flicker. So more or less, this is a non-viable pregnancy. So ultrasound will tell us early on whether the pregnancy is alive or not. That is one of the reasons why we request for transvaginal ultrasound in the first trimester. So also remember that we declare embryonic demise if the crown to rump length, kung mineasure namin yung baby at more 7 millimeters or more ang kanyang measurement, pero wala pa ring cardiac activity, we can safely say that this pregnancy is non-viable. Remember the crown to rump length of 7 millimeters, because when you are now primary health physician at sinabi sa inyo ng ultrasound na ganito ang crown to rump length, pero walang heart rate, pero hindi nag-commit yung sonologist kung buhay o hindi yung baby, at least at your level, you know that if a baby is 7 millimeters in crown to rump length, dapat may heart rate na yan. Pag wala, that is already embryonic demise. Next is I will show to you that this is the normal ultrasound of a 6 weeks AOG baby, wherein you could see the gestational sac. This is the gestational sac, the embryo, and the yolk sac. So remember that at 6 weeks age of gestation, this is the earliest time wherein you can see embryo with cardiac activity. At 5 weeks, you can only see the gestational sac together with the yolk sac. Lalabas lang ang embryo at 6 weeks. So try to remember that. So these are the sonologic signs of early pregnancy failure. Meaning, pag sinabi sa inyo ito ng sonologist, ibig sabihin malaki ang chance mag-a-abort yung pregnancy na yan. So these are the sonologic signs. The first is the small for gestational sac syndrome, meaning this is the gestational sac and this is the embryo. Makikita mo parang ang liit ng sac as compared to the embryo. And this is the phenomenon of early oligohydramnios. The moment you see this, monitor The fetus, even at this particular point in time, may heartbeat pa siya, pero is small for gestational sac. Monitor that baby. Baka mamaya, later on, the baby will die later. This is subchorionic hemorrhage. You see the gestational sac here with the baby, but you could see also a dark area here. In ultrasound, when we say hypoechoic, anechoic, itim yun, no? It's either air or water or blood. So this is what is called as the subchorionic hemorrhage. May dumudugo dun sa implantation site. So the moment the subchorionic hemorrhage is not arrested at umikot yan around, para lang yung balat ng lumpia, pag tinanggal mo siya, tanggal na siya. So if this will be going around the implantation site, the baby will be totally detached from its attachment to the uterus, and ergo you will be having abortion or miscarriage. Another thing is if you see a yolk sac, which is very big, okay, the yolk sac should be smaller than the embryo. But if you see a yolk sac which is big, this is called macro yolk sac. Lastly, if you see a very large gestational sac with no yolk sac nor embryo inside, this is an embryonic pregnancy or blighted ovum. So anong ibig sabihin nun? Nabuo yung pregnancy, nag-start siya sa gestational sac, pero nag-arrest na siya doon. Hindi na siya nag-develop further. Namatay na siya doon sa area na yon. That's why it's called blighted ovum, parang nabugok yung itlog. So, the moment you see this, these are the sonologic signs of early pregnancy failure. And even at the time when the baby is still alive during these features, you need to monitor the pregnancy because it could be there could be some problem later on in the progression in the development of pregnancy. So let me give you some clinical application. So the presence of small for gestational sac syndrome, subchorionic hemorrhage, macroyolk sac, anembryonic pregnancy, you know that they are sonologic signs or predictors of early pregnancy failure. So what you should do? You should refer this to the specialist. So at the level of a primary healthcare physician, you must know that these are predictors of early pregnancy failure, and therefore you need to refer them to the specialist. Okay? Next, pregnancy localization. Siguro napakadali namang tignan na yung uterus, this is the gestational sac and this is the yolk sac. You could see that it is well within the uterus. Pero, kung nakita mo na yung uterus ay empty at nakita mo itong embryo mo with the yolk sac with cardiac activity sa labas ng uterus, and the woman has hypogastric pain, and the woman has bleeding, this is ectopic pregnancy. And therefore, you need to refer to the specialist. No? Baka pumutok yan. Pag pumutok yan, the mother will be having intrauterine or intra-abdominal bleeding, and this might kill the patient because of uncontrollable bleeding inside. So another thing that might save the lives of our patients during the first trimester is to localize the pregnancy. This is an important thing. Please listen to this. The crown to rump length, which we measure from the crown of the head to the rump of the breech, is the most accurate predictor of the age of gestation with an error only of plus minus 3 to 5 days. Why? Why is it the most accurate predictor of the age of gestation? Because there is very little size variability in the first trimester, making it a reliable predictor of AOG. What does that mean? It only means that during the time in the first trimester, when we are embryos, we are small embryos, lahat tayo pantay-pantay. Kahit ikaw ay Amerikano, kahit ikaw ay European, kahit ikaw ay Unano, kahit ikaw ay Pilipino, Asian, Wala ba pare-pareho tayo ng crown to rump length? Meaning the genetic factor as well as the biologic factors do not have some influence on the crown to rump length. Kaya this is the most accurate predictor of the age of gestation. What happens if you do your biometry or the age of gestation determination during the second and the third trimester? This is the fetal size is very much affected by the individual genetic expression and biologic factors, and therefore you can have erroneous results. Hindi na accurate ang age of gestation mo. Habang lumalaki at tumatanda yung pregnancy, palaki ng palaki ang error. So you must document your age of gestation in the first trimester using transvaginal ultrasound by the measurement of the crown to rump length. Remember that if the difference in the age of gestation based on the crown to rump length and LMP is 7 days or more, you need to follow the sonar aging. The sonar aging is more correct. However, if the difference between the crown to rump length, meaning the sonar aging, and the LMP is less than 7 days, you follow the LMP because more or less it is correct. Once the age of gestation is set, you must never change it based on the ultrasound findings later. So, pag na-determine mo na yun na yung age of gestation. Kasi more often than not, pag nagpa-ultrasound uli kayo at 5 months, 6 months, 7 months, iba-iba na ang sasabihin sa inyo niyan. Just remember, the older the baby gets, the more erroneous is the determination of the age of gestation by ultrasound. So, you need to set and document the age of gestation based on the crown to rump length. Also remember na kailangan natin ito because this is the cornerstone, meaning the documentation of the age of gestation in the first trimester is the cornerstone in the diagnosis and management of fetal growth restriction. Therefore, documentation of the AOG took by crown to rump length in the first trimester is important. So, anong ibig sabihin nun? Ibig sabihin, kunyari, hindi ka nag-document nung age of gestation mo by crown to rump length. Dumating ang baby mo, ang nanay, at sinasabi niya, based on LMP, 32 weeks na yung baby. Pero nung in-ultrasound mo, 28 weeks lang. So, paano mo masasabi kung ito ay mali lang yung age of gestation or ito ay talagang maliit na baby because of fetal malnutrition? So samantalang kung dinocument mo yan, we can already rule out wrong aging as the cause of the smallness of the fetus. We are sure that the fetus is small because he or she is growth restricted, secondary to poor delivery of nutrients and oxygen due to uteroplacental insufficiency, which may lead to death in utero. Parang nasolusyonan mo na yon kesa yung hindi mo alam. Ano ba to? Maliit ba to na matanda o talagang bata pa siya? So whereas if you documented that early on, wala ka ng problema, hindi iyan wrong date. So talagang maliit ang baby. Okay? So it is important, more or less, dapat sa lahat ng pregnancy, kung maaari lang, there should be documentation at the age of gestation by using the crown to rump length. So AOG, which is not documented in the first trimester, has the following errors. If you do it at 12 to 20 weeks, the error is plus minus 7 days. And so on and so forth. Habang tumatanda ang baby, palaki ng palaki ang error. Therefore, I want you to remember and do not forget that the crown to rump length is the best predictor of the age of gestation. As we have said, this is the reason behind these erroneous results is that fetal size when you go on later in pregnancy is already significantly affected by the individual genetic expression as well as biologic factors. Whereas the crown to rump length, hindi siya affected. Therefore, the more advanced the age of gestation when ultrasound is done, the greater is the error in the age of gestation. So again, paulit-ulit kong sinasabi that because of this not affected by genetic and biological factors, crown to rump length is the most accurate predictor of the age of gestation. So let me just also give you the normal expected sono-embryologic development progression. Pag 3 weeks ba, anong nakikita mo? Pag 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, 7 weeks. So, earliest, this is used when the woman is unsure of dates, no, or irregular ang cycle. Hindi mo mapagkatiwalaan yung Naegelian niya kasi hindi siya sure sa LMP niya. And therefore, you can use these different parameters on a particular age of gestation. Pag positive ang pregnancy test, but 3 weeks lang, so what you could see is just a decidualized endometrium. Wala kayong makikita. Walang laman ng uterus. But it's also only a thickened endometrium and we call it a decidualized endometrium. This is what you see at 3 weeks age of gestation. After 1 week at 4 weeks, what you could see is a small gestational sac. So at 4 weeks, pag nakita nyo yan, gestational sac, 4 weeks yan. After 1 week, at 5 weeks, makikita ninyo, meron nang nadagdag sa gestational sac, and this is the small ring-like structure, which is called the yolk sac. You can see this at 5 weeks. As I've said, it is at 6 weeks wherein you will see the embryo with cardiac activity. So, and later on, at 7 weeks, you should see the amnion. So, the amniotic membrane. You will already see that. Ibig sabihin, dapat may baby munang lumabas bago magkaroon ng amnion. Kasi pag nakakita kayo ng ultrasound na may yolk sac, may amnion, pero walang baby, that is definitely an embryonic pregnancy. Remember, 3 weeks, just a decidualized endometrium, but your pregnancy test is positive already. 4 weeks, gestational sac. 5 weeks, yolk sac. 6 weeks, embryo. 7 weeks, amniotic membrane. So I want you to remember that because you can just look at it and say, ay, 5 weeks ka lang. Okay? Hindi ka 7 weeks katulad ng kiniklaim ng LMP mo. So this is how you will be looking at the different age of gestation in early pregnancy. So let me give you a clinical application of this. So yung babae, pumunta sa inyo, ang sabi niya, ang LMP niya ay ganon, kinumpute nyo 6 weeks. Pero irregular ang cycles niya. So you did an ultrasound, but you see only a gestational sac. Diba ang sabi natin, ang 6 weeks dapat may embryo na may cardiac activity, may yolk sac at may gestational sac. So definitely, hindi ito compatible sa 6 weeks. So, di ba pag nakita natin ang GS, 4 weeks ito, sabi ko sa inyo. So, we may be considering wrong dates. Baka naman hindi sa 6 weeks, baka 4 weeks talaga siya. Or baka naman 6 weeks siya talaga, pero hindi nag-develop ang baby. So, you will consider that. So, what should be done? Is this a wrong dates and that 4 weeks lang siya? Or is it 6 weeks talaga, pero an embryonic pregnancy? What should you do next is that you refer to the specialist, no? Kung may specialist na mapagre-referan at meron kayong ganitong problema, i-refer nyo na lang. Okay naman yon as a primary health physician. Pero, kung nasa Europe, nagbabakasyon yung espesyalista doon sa malapit sa area nyo, what can you do? Hugutin nyo lang yung knowledge nyo na 4 weeks to eh. So, pag pinaulit ko yung ultrasound, after 2 weeks, dapat may makita akong embryo. So, yun nga ang ginawa nyo. You repeated the ultrasound after 2 weeks. So, if you are claiming or you are considering that yung unang ultrasound niya is indeed 4 weeks and you repeated the ultrasound after 2 weeks at ito ang nakita ninyo, that clinch your diagnosis that this woman has wrong dates and the pregnancy is really 6 weeks age of gestation. But, nung nirepeat nyo, wala pa rin kayong nakitang yolk sac or wala pa rin kayong nakitang embryo, na ine-expect nyo at 6 weeks. Kasi kung 4 weeks ito, after 2 weeks, 6 weeks eh. Now, this is an embryonic pregnancy. So this is the application of the things that you must know. Kasi hindi lahat ng time may specialist dun sa area nyo. Kung wala, at least alam ninyo kung paano gumalaw. Okay? So let's look at the fetal number and chorionicity. This is a monochorionic pregnancy because you only have one outer layer, which is the chorion, but you have two amnion inside. So this is monochorionic diamniotic pregnancy. Why is it important that ultrasound in the first trimester need to have or to know the chorionicity? Because the complication rate in monochorionicity is higher as compared to that of dichorionic pregnancy. So the complication rate is such that it could have twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome, growth discordance, single intrauterine fetal death, or TRAPS. So I won't bother you knowing all these things, but that it's enough that you know that monochorionic pregnancy has a lot of complications. Why? Because they have vascular anastomosis, no? Magkakadugtong yung vessels ng dalawang twins. And if there will be unbalanced circulation, which I will try to explain to you later, it will lead to these complications. So, what is twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome in monochorionic twins? As we have said, dun sa loob ng inunan, merong mga vascular anastomosis, no? Magkakadugtong yung vessels. Such that dapat para normal yung nagpupunta sa A na dugo ay dapat bumabalik sa B. Dapat paikot-ikot lang yan. Okay? That is the balanced circulation. What if nagkaroon ng bara? Okay? And you have bara here. So that is unbalanced circulation. Nagkaroon ng kinking or nagkaroon ng thrombosis dun sa area. So what will happen is that all the blood that is going to the A will go to the B and nothing will go back to A. So this A becomes a donor twin. Lahat-lahat ng kanya ibibigay niya dito sa recipient twin. And therefore, it's quite easy to understand that this baby will now become growth restricted, anemic, and will be having poor amniotic fluid kasi walang natitira sa kanya. Dito lang, walang bumabalik sa kanya. Whereas the recipient twin, tanggap ng dugo, di nag-overload na siya, nagkaroon na siya ng congestive heart failure, ang dami-dami niya ng tubig kasi ihi siya ng ihi, no? Dahil ang daming dumadating na dugo sa kanya, and also be having bombarded with the red blood cells, and therefore there will be polycythemia. So this is the twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome, wherein if you have some problems or unbalanced circulation in the deep anastomosis, there will be one-sided or one-way delivery, such that one becomes a donor twin and the other one becomes a recipient twin. So therefore, chronicity determination plays a vital role in the monitoring and management of expected complications associated with monochorionic twins. This is highly accurate if done in the first trimester, less than 14 weeks, with very high sensitivity and specificity. So this is how it looked like by ultrasound. So when we have a monochorionic, monoamniotic twin, these babies will be side by side with each other and enclosed within one membrane. Whereas if we have a monochorionic twin, but diamniotic, no? Isang chorion, dalawang amnion, you will be seeing later on by ultrasound. And dichorionic, diamniotic, dalawang chorion, dalawang amnion. So by ultrasound, what you will see in monochorionic diamniotic twin is what is called as the T sign, because you only have very thin membrane being represented by the two layers of the amnion. So ito yung nakikita nyo as separating membrane. Whereas in dichorionic diamniotic, you will be having this triangular area, and this is what is seen as the twin peak sign or the lambda sign. So this is a thicker membrane because this is made up of two chorion and two amnion. So remember that T sign is for di-mono because manipis lang, dalawang amnion lang meron siya. Yung makapal called the twin peak or the lambda sign is because you have four membranes altogether. So this is how we determine the chorionicity, and you know that monochorionic twins are the twins with very high morbidity and mortality because of the unbalanced anastomosis in the placenta. Again, remember, documentation of the chorionicity must be done in the first trimester of pregnancy, and the T sign and the twin peak signs are lost after 14 weeks age of gestation. You cannot see that anymore, and therefore documentation of chorionicity must be done in the first trimester less than 14 weeks age of gestation. And pelvic mass in pregnancy. So if you see uterus with intrauterine pregnancy, but you see a mass outside, therefore, you can already diagnose it, and you can guide and you can monitor it such that it will not complicate the pregnancy later on. So these are the first trimester anomalies. The head is normal like this. You should be having intact cranium and and the brain must be well within the cranium. However, look at this. You have a baby wherein this is 3D, this is 2D. You could see the brain protruding out of the skull. And this is the reason is you have congenital absence of the cranium. Hindi na develop yung upper portion ng skull. And therefore, the brain exudes out. And therefore, the absence of the cranium is acrania, and therefore you have exencephaly, meaning your brain goes out of the amniotic cavity. And since the amniotic cavity has corrosive effect and some chemicals in the exposed brain, dadating yung time na mauubos na yung brain. Kinain na ng kinain ng amniotic fluid. Parang naanod, no? Nawala. Nawala na yung brain dahil sa antagal niyang nakababad sa amniotic fluid. And later on, the baby will now become anencephaly. You have a baby without the upper portion of the brain. And this is a fatal anomaly. Walang baby na nabubuhay with anencephaly. So this is what we call acrania, walang cranium, exencephaly, lumabas ang brain. Later on, nawala na yung brain kasi natunaw na siya doon sa pagkaka-expose niya sa amniotic fluid. So this is a very early phenomenon that can be seen in the first trimester. Another thing is that there are first trimester sonologic signs of Down syndrome. First trimester pa lang, napipredict mo na ng baby na ito ay trisomy 21 or Down syndrome. How? We look at the back, the nape. If the nape of the baby, known as nuchal translucency, is 3 millimeters or more, that is abnormal. The skin at the back of the nape should be less than 3 millimeter. Next is that if you do not see a nasal bone, no, walang buto yung kanyang ilong, and there are some cardiac abnormalities, these are the sonologic signs of trisomy 21. And therefore, we can request for karyotyping of the baby and in order to determine Down syndrome. The next several things are the second trimester anomalies. So, skin-lamp down ko na dito yung second trimester para mas madali. You see, this is the fetal thorax, and you could see the heart inside. But look at this. This baby's heart is outside. You see the heart pumping outside of the thorax. This is the gross picture of that baby. This is another fatal congenital anomaly, which we can see by ultrasound even prior to the delivery of the baby. And we call this as ectopia cordis, meaning the heart is outside. So, another thing is what is called a sirenomelia, mermaid syndrome. This is the congenitally fused lower extremities. You could see by ultrasound that the femur are hiwalay pero nag-join yung dalawang lower portion of the leg. And this is due to the congenital fusion of the lower extremities. So parang sirena, no? Sirena yung baby. That's why it's called mermaid syndrome. And I probably have seen only one of this in my entire time as practicing obstetrician, gynecologist, and sonologist. So this is sirenomelia. So these are just the different abnormalities that we could see, and we could already counsel the patient. O paglabas ng baby mo, ganito itsura ha. So more or less we can plan ahead. So this is sirenomelia. Now let's go to the second and third trimester ultrasound. Like in the first trimester, it is also important to do the M mode or the motion mode and try to detect the heart rate. So this is a live baby. So what about presentation? If you put, why is it important that we know presentation? Because uh, the only non-problematic majority of the delivery vaginally is cephalic presentation. In a woman who is a gravid and the baby is presenting non-cephalic like breech or transverse lie, you cannot deliver them vaginally. They should be delivered by cesarean section. And therefore, everybody must be prepared to do that. So the probe will be put on the lower portion of the uterus at the hypogastrium of the mother. If during the probe placement you see the head, so this is cephalic. If you see the puwet, the buttocks, or the lower extremities, the feet and the legs, that is breech. If you see nothing, or the what you see is the abdomen, this is transverse. So this is how we look at presentation. So this will tell us what is the presenting portion in the baby, in the area of the cervix, so that we know whether the mother can be safely delivered vaginally or not. So what about placental localization? Remember, the placenta is a fetal structure that is attached to the uterine wall so that all the nutrition from the mother will go into the placenta, will go out into the umbilical cord to supply the baby. So that is the role of the placenta. So why is it important that we know where the placenta is? So I'll just help you understand the orientation. So this is the fundus of the uterus. This is the fundus. This is anterior. Okay, so this is near the abdomen of the mother. This is posterior, and this is near the spine. So if you see the placenta here, that is fundal. If you see the placenta here, that is anterior. And if you see the placenta here, that is posterior. Okay, so this is an anterior placenta. Placenta is a spongy-looking structure or tissue na makikita nyo lined by the amniotic fluid. So this is an anterior placenta and this is a posterior placenta. What is important is that this placenta should not be near the cervix, because if the placenta is near or overlying the cervix, you call it placenta previa, meaning it is going ahead the way of the baby. And that if the cervix opens, it will be ripping off the vascularity which is attaching the placenta to the uterus, and you will be having bleeding. Therefore, if this is the cervix and this is the placenta, if I may outline it, this is the cervical canal and this is the placenta. You see that the placenta is overlying the it is crossing along the cervix such that if the cervix opens during the time of labor, it will be ripping off all the vessels attaching the placenta to the uterus, and therefore you have a lot of bleeding. Again, this is the cervix and this is the placenta. So ito masyado yung crossing over, ito konti lang. Again, pag binasahan ang pasyente ninyo, nagpa-ultrasound kayo ng pasyente nyo in the second trimester, tapos sinabi ng sonologist sa inyo, placenta previa, i-refer nyo na yan because the complication is bleeding. All these patients must be referred to the specialist because if the placenta will not be getting off the cervix later on, kasi pwede namang paglaki ng uterus, sumama yung placenta pataas so that is possible. But if it remains there, this patient has to be delivered vaginally by cesarean section because attempting a vaginal delivery will lead to torrential bleeding. Another thing is amniotic fluid volume. Amniotic fluid volume is the amount of the amniotic fluid or yung water surrounding the baby. No? So we quantitate amniotic fluid volume by the deepest vertical pocket. So hahanap kami ng area na walang fetal parts. So i-measure namin in the vertical direction. Such as in this is the single vertical pocket equal to 1.56 centimeters. Ito sobrang dami, no? So this is oligohydramnios. And here, sobrang dami, 20.2. And this is polyhydramnios. Oligo is when the vertical pocket is less than 2 centimeters. Poly, if your single vertical pocket is 8 centimeters or more. So, oligohydramnios, polyhydramnios. Ano ang clinical significance nito? Bakit nating dapat malaman as a primary health care physician kung oligo or poly yung pasyente? Because oligohydramnios, the causes are uteroplacental insufficiency, premature rupture of membrane, or genitourinary tract abnormality. So just remember that the amniotic fluid in the second and the third trimester is being brought about by fetal urination. Yung ihi ng baby, yung nagpuproduce ng amniotic fluid. And therefore, pag pumutok yung panubigan, edi mababawasan yung amniotic fluid. Diba? Pag minsan natutuyuan. Pag walang kidneys or there is some bara in the genitourinary tract, so there will also be some problems. And uteroplacental insufficiency because kung ano yung iniihi ng baby ay depende lang naman sa natatanggap niyang perfusion from the mother via the placenta to the umbilical cord. And therefore, pag na-rule out nyo, ay hindi pumutok ang panubigan, wala ba misis na lumabas na sa vagina na water? Wala po. So, tinignan nyo naman sa ultrasound, intact naman ang kidneys, ang bladder, and everything. You think that this probably is uteroplacental insufficiency. Ang masama nito ay yung effect nito. Pag wala kang tubig, or worse is anhydramnios kung wala kang tubig, the umbilical cord can be compressed by the baby itself against the uterine wall. And we call it cord accident, and this will definitely lead to fetal death in utero. So that is the importance why we need to know oligohydramnios by ultrasound. What about polyhydramnios? Ang polyhydramnios naman, kung ito ay genitourinary abnormality, ito naman ay gastrointestinal tract. Why? Because yung amniotic fluid ay nadidecrease, no? Ang nagpuproduce nito is fetal urine. Ang nagpapaalis nito at nagpapababa naman ng quantity is the fetal swallowing. Sinuswallow niya yung amniotic fluid, no? Kasi importante yun for the development of the GI tract. But kung may bara kayo, like in duodenal atresia, in gastric esophageal atresia, wherein the baby cannot swallow. Therefore, ihi ng ihi, hindi naman nasuswallow. So, dami ng dami yung amniotic fluid. It can also be a marker of uncontrolled hyperglycemia in diabetes, in maternal diabetes, because, di ba, yung diabetic na tao, ihi ng ihi. Ganon din yung baby na diabetic yung nanay. Ihi siya ng ihi. So this is a marker. If you see this and the mother is diabetic, that means the mother's blood sugar level is not controlled. So what can be its effect? So lalaki ng lalaki yung tiyan, yung uterus ng nanay, because of increased amniotic fluid. It can lead to preterm labor and it can lead to postpartum hemorrhage because of uterine overdistension. So this is the implication of the amniotic fluid determination by ultrasound. What about the determination of the gravid cervix? So this is the cervix. We are doing it transvaginal because we want to look at and focus at the cervix. So um, we do it in order to assess in the prediction of preterm labor or birth. It is done at 16 to 24 weeks when a transabdominal ultrasound should be done for the fetus, but we want to look at the cervix. That's why we do it transvaginal. It's 16 weeks because cervix becomes sonologically distinct only from the lower uterine segment at 16 weeks. Before that, hindi mo pa siya ma-determine. An indication is for high-risk pregnancy, especially those with previous preterm births, because they are the high-risk population to deliver by preterm again in the next pregnancy. So if you see this is the head, this is the amniotic sac, and you see a very short cervix. And short cervix, if it's 25 millimeters or less. If you see a short cervix at 16 to 24 weeks, there is increased risk of spontaneous preterm birth, and therefore there should be management. There is an available preemptive management to that to prevent preterm labor. But if you see a cervix which is long, meaning 30 millimeters or more, there is less chance to go into preterm labor. So this is more of a predictive and prophylactic strategy in order to prevent babies being delivered preterm. So what about fetal gender? So fetal gender, this is the hamburger sign. If you see the hamburger sign, this is a girl. If you see the turtle sign, this is a boy. So this is the head of the turtle and this is the body. So this is the burger and this is the bread. And you look at it on the side view. Is it a medical indication to do ultrasound? No. Gender determination is not a medical indication for ultrasound. However, most often, these patients demand for gender reveal. No, hindi siya kasama, hindi siya importante para ma-manage mo ang pasyente. Do you know that in India, kapag ang sonologists ay nag-divulge ng gender, they can be imprisoned because yung iba, pag nakitang girl, pinapa-abort. Okay, so in India, it's a definite no-no to reveal the gender of the baby. But in here sa atin, gender reveal yan. Day in and day out, side to side, and everything. Every time, yan ang gusto ng pasyente. So what about fetal growth assessment? As I've said, pauulitin ko ulit that the cornerstone in the diagnosis and management of fetal growth restriction is the documentation of the age of gestation by crown to ramp length in the first trimester. We must have first trimester documentation of AOG, and serial ultrasound for growth should be done every 3 weeks, and there should be growth chart monitoring. So this is the growth chart monitoring. If you see that the baby is growing linear, meaning it follows the normal growth curve, this baby is normal, having normal growth velocity. But if you see plateauing, meaning nag-deviate siya from the normal curve. This means there is fetal growth restriction. And the biometry here, the head is bigger than the abdomen, and we call it the asymmetric or head sparing type of fetal growth restriction, which I will be explaining to you in a while. So Doppler velocimetry evaluates tissue perfusion and is of great help in the monitoring and management of fetal growth restriction secondary to uteroplacental insufficiency. So let me just explain to you a bit about fetal growth restriction. And I will tell you why there is head sparing FGR and why there is oligohydramnios. So if the mother or the pregnancy has uteroplacental insufficiency such that if the mother is severely hypertensive, there will be fetal hypoxia and there will be asymmetric or head sparing FGR and oligohydramnios. So this is the pathophysiology. When the baby feels that there is a hypoxia, it will compensate. And the early compensatory response of that baby not to die in utero is blood flow redistribution from less vital to the more vital organs. Meaning the more vital organs are the heart, the brain, and the adrenals. All other organs beside these three are less vital. Therefore, dapat ang susuportahan niya itong mga organs na to. Kasi pag ito ay bumigay, patay. Okay? Whereas itong mga to, kahit kontian mo ang blood flow dito, hindi siya masyadong, para lang yan sa gera, no? Pag naggerahan sa Pilipinas, ang poprotektahan Malacanang. Kasi yun yung brain. Yun yung brain ng country. Pag bumagsak yun, patay na. Okay? So therefore, if we have this, what will happen is that there will be middle cerebral artery vasodilatation, which is also called the brain sparing reflex, in order to support the brain. Magba-vasodilate yung ugat sa brain para masustentuhan yung kanyang needs at the expense of the less vital organs. So the less vital organs will be having less perfusion because dito niya idinudonate sa brain. Let's talk about the liver and the soft tissues. If you diminish blood flow to this system and you also give all the energy going to the brain because it needs energy, and you only get energy in terms of glycogenolysis, lipolysis, proteolysis, and you give it to the brain through gluconeogenesis. All of these tissues will shrink. Wala na nga siyang perfusion, kinuhanan pa siya papunta dito sa brain. And therefore, at the outset, you will be having a head which is not affected. So the head will just be growing normally, but the liver and the soft tissues will be shrinking, and you will be having a small body. And by ultrasound, we measure the head as head circumference, and we measure the body as abdominal circumference. Abdominal circumference is where the liver is. And therefore, you will be having a baby with a big head with a small body. And this is what is called as asymmetric type or head sparing type of fetal growth restriction because the baby is still compensating. What about the kidneys? If you diminish the blood flow to the kidneys, there will be decreased urine output. And knowing that the amniotic fluid is 70 to 80% donated by the fetal urine, therefore diminution of the fetal urination will lead to oligohydramnios. Therefore, if you see an asymmetrically or head-sparing small baby and oligohydramnios, this is definitely secondary to uteroplacental insufficiency. You know what I'm saying to my patients so that they will understand? Alam nyo ba yung nangyayari sa baby mo kasi sobrang high blood ka? Walang nagpupuntang oxygen sa baby mo. Kunyari, ikaw si baby, ilalagay kita sa loob ng drum. Yung loob ng drum, yun yung uterus. Tapos sasaraduhan ko siya ng simento. And that is uteroplacental insufficiency. If you will not be kung walang kukuha sa iyo sa loob ng drum na yon, you will die definitely. And this is what happens in babies with uteroplacental insufficiency. And the early communication this baby is telling you is by ultrasound. You see the baby small, with a big head and small body, at walang amniotic fluid. This baby is telling you that I'm inside the drum. I am so hypoxic here. So please help me. Okay? So that is the communication. And now I will enter here Doppler velocimetry para maintindihan ninyo. So when we do Doppler velocimetry, we look at the uterine arteries. This is maternal vessel and umbilical artery and middle cerebral artery, which is the fetal vessels. So this is how it looks like by ultrasound. And this is how it looked like in umbilical artery. And this is the middle cerebral artery. So uterine artery, if you have high PI, meaning you have high resistance in the uterine artery, meaning your vessels there are vasoconstricted, and this is compatible with maternal hypertension. And therefore, if you have vasoconstricted vessels in the uterine artery, you likewise decrease blood flow going to the placenta and you diminish perfusion to the fetus. What about umbilical artery? Just for you to understand what is umbilical artery, if this is the fetal aorta, it will be branching out into common iliac, into external iliac, and into the internal iliac. Internal iliac will now branch into umbilical arteries, and these umbilical arteries will go out and join the umbilical vein via the umbilical cord and go into the placenta. And therefore, umbilical artery carries used or unoxygenated blood. Siya yung nagdadala ng blood para ma-oxygenate papunta sa placenta. Therefore, kung ang placenta mo ay barado, if you have a placental abnormality such that in preeclampsia, in placental developmental abnormality, you have small vessels, you have kink vessels, you have small number of population of the vessels, and therefore barado yung circulation. So what will happen is you will increase the resistance and there will be slowing down of the blood flow leading to increase in the pulsatility index. And therefore, if you have high pulsatility index in the placenta, this means there is an increased resistance in the umbilical artery. Remember that umbilical artery is an indirect reflection of placental vascular health. Kumbaga sa traffic, barado yung pupuntahan mo. Kaya nag-i-slow down at nag-i-increase ang resistance as measured by Doppler. There is increased impedance or obstruction in the placental vessels, and this is compatible with abnormal placentation, such as in cases of preeclampsia and fetal growth restriction. So what happens to the middle cerebral artery? Ang sabi natin, di ba, pag may ganito ng uteroplacental insufficiency, the baby will protect its brain. And that is called the brain sparing reflex. There will be preferential vasodilatation to the middle cerebral artery as a form of compensation from uteroplacental insufficiency. So what will happen is that we will be seeing low PI. And this means there is decreasing resistance in the middle cerebral artery because there is preferential vasodilatation as a compensatory response to prevent a death of the brain. And this is called the brain sparing compensatory response to fetal hypoxia. This is how Doppler is important in FGR. So I know it's difficult, but I tackle this because kahit papano, kahit yung prinsipyo lang malaman ninyo. Hindi naman kayo kailangan mag-interpret niyan. Yung prinsipyo lang, such that if you have high PI, meaning your vessels are highly resistant, either kasi vasoconstricted siya, maliit yung caliber niya, or dahil may bara siya. So that means if you have high PI in the uterine artery, you have diminution of blood flow from the mother to the fetus. If you have high PI in the umbilical artery, you have obstructed placenta. Likewise, decrease na nga yung galing sa nanay, decrease pa yung pumupunta sa placenta. And therefore, the baby will respond with preferential vasodilatation to the middle cerebral artery. Therefore, it is used in the diagnosis and monitoring of growth-restricted fetus. Again, if you have hypertensive mother, you have uteroplacental insufficiency, the early response, compensatory response of the baby is blood flow redistribution from the less vital to the more vital organ. The placenta will likewise be vasoconstricted, and there will be preferential vasodilatation to protect the brain, and therefore the PI will decrease. And in the umbilical artery, it will increase because it is, I said, an indirect reflection of placental vascular health. It increases in resistance because it is being impeded by the abnormal vessels in the placenta. So just remember the main principles. What about in the uterine artery? In the uterine artery, it predicts preclinical preeclampsia or FGR. When we interrogate the uterine artery at 16 to 24 weeks, this is the normal thing that you should see in morphology. But if you see notching, no, yung may babagsak na ganon, tas aakyat ulit, this is notching. You do not see it here. So this is normal. The moment you see notching, and you did it at 18 to 24 weeks, this means it predicts that the woman will become hypertensive, or there will be fetal growth restriction in 50 and 30% respectively later in the course of pregnancy. Because this only means that there is some abnormality in the remodeling of the spiral arterioles in the uteroplacental unit. Therefore, uterine artery notching at 16 to 24 weeks age of gestation predicts the possibility of hypertension and FGR later in the course of pregnancy. Ano naman ang katuturan nun? Bakit natin kailangan malaman yun? Dapat nating malaman kasi there could be prophylactic medications to that in the form of low-dose aspirin and high-dose calcium. If you predict the woman, even at the time that you did this, is still normotensive, they will develop this later on. But if you give these prophylactic medications among women screen positive for notching, you will diminish and prevent or alleviate the morbidities associated with preeclampsia and or fetal growth restriction. So that is the importance. May screening parameter ka, may magagawa ka. And you can do this at the level of the primary health physician. You can just request for your uterine artery Doppler at 16 to 24 weeks. Pag lumabas na ganyan, bibigyan mo ng aspirin tsaka high-dose calcium. Okay? Therefore, before ending my lecture, I just want to give you some take-home messages that the primary health physicians should have adequate knowledge on the indications for requesting OB ultrasound, as well as to interpret the basic sonologic pictures and results so that decisions can be made on timely referral of high-risk patients to the specialist. At least alam nyo kung ano yung normal, kung ano yung abnormal, kung sino yung i-refer nyo, at kung sino ang hindi. Knowing more than the basics, like explaining to you the pathophysiology of fetal growth restriction and the basics of ultrasound may help you provide responsible initial management for referable patient in case a specialist is not readily available in your area. However, clinicians should not solely rely on sonologic findings but have to correlate them clinically for more sensible management decision plans for our patients. You know why? Because hypertrophy of technology leads to the atrophy of judgment. So liliit utak nyo pag lagi na lang kayo sa ultrasound nagbabase. So I guess this is my last slide. Thank you so much for listening. Are there any questions? I will stop my... Are there any questions? Please open your videos. Do you have any questions you want to clear as far as OB ultrasound is concerned? You just raise your hand so that we can see. Jallo, are you here? Oh, walang questions? Talaga, naintindihan nyo lahat, ha? Pag hindi kayo nagtanong, ako magtatanong sa inyo. Sige, magtatanong ako, ha? Kung tatanungin kayo, ano yung pinaka hindi nyo makakalimutan sa lecture na to? Kimson Maria Vina. There is no wrong and right answer. Just tell me what you have learned and you will not forget.
The one that I will always remember po is the crown to rump length is the best predictor of AOG po, Doc.
Okay, so that's good. At least, yun yung isa sa mga gusto ko na hindi nyo makalimutan. I will call 5, okay? Castañeda Carl.
Hello, Doc.
Yes, Carl?
What really stuck with me was the ano po, yung weeks of gestation. Like for example, for 4 weeks, yung binabantayan po talaga is the gestational sac. Then for 5 weeks is the yolk sac. And then for 6 weeks is the embryo po.
Okay, so that's good. And also try to remember na kahit positive ang pregnancy test mo, if it's too early, it's less than 4 weeks, wala kayong makikita, kundi just a thickened endometrium. Okay?
Yes, Doc.
Third, Leverisa.
Hi, Doc. So what I've learned
Alexander, Eric.
yes, well, am I audible po ba, Doc?
Yes. Yes,
Yes.
Eric, we can hear you.
I think, Doc, what stuck with me the most first and foremost the same was the crown and rump length. But since that answer was taken, parang Doc, what stuck with me the most was that as future primary healthcare physicians, that po talaga we know like certain warning signs and also like if meron pong mali po yung dating of the pregnancy, it's very important that we know when some things are out of our own depth and refer to a specialist na po dapat.
So you need to know what is normal. If you think this is not normal, refer. Okay? Pero wag naman kayo ng refer kung normal naman yung findings na yon. Okay? So next, Micaela Andrea Mati. Iha, naka-mute ka.
So, I think one thing that struck me the most would be your discussion regarding oligo and polyhydramnios po. Most especially the one where you emphasize like how when a mother's hypertension could really affect the growth and development po of the infant. And like how you said po na we can like compare it to a person who is placed inside a drum po where he or she will not be able to receive enough oxygen po and thus would suffer from the effects of hypoxia po.
Okay. So at least by that correlation, meron namang tumama sa inyo. Okay? Meaning, may tumama sa puso ninyo. That you can understand this, and these are important things. You know, what I'm saying, our specialty is quite different, is quite more difficult than other specialties. You know why? Because we have two patients at the same time. One complains. The mother can complain, but the baby do not complain. And therefore, it's up for us to determine ano yung mga modalities na pwede namin gawin para maintindihan namin at maramdaman namin kung ano ang ginagawa ng baby na yan. And ultrasound and cardiotocography are the two very important technologies that we use in order to feel the baby inside. So yun lang yung communication namin sa kanila. So kaya dapat matuto kayong makipag-communicate kahit basic lang ng ultrasound, kahit basic lang ng cardiotocography. Okay? And lastly, baka may gusto mag-volunteer. O isa na lang, volunteer. Walang magvo-volunteer talaga? O sige. Matienzo. John Paulo. Nakamute ka, iho. Nakamute ka.
Hello? Hello po.
Yes. Yes, you're audible now.
Sorry po, medyo naglalag po yung laptop ko. Pero isa pa din po dun sa mga most natutunan ko is yung at 4 weeks, at 5 weeks, at 6 weeks, and then how to reassess po kapag hindi same yung findings. And then another one is yung sa yung you must never change the AOG once it's set na.
By the sonar aging,
Hello po.
by the crown to ramp length.
Sorry po kung
Okay?
kung lagi yung voice ko.
Okay, so I guess this is it. So I think I have gave you everything, and expect your exam that I will give is more of analysis. So tinuro ko naman yun, kaya dapat intindihin ninyo. Okay, it's more of analysis on how you will interpret. Okay, if there are no questions, let's just call it a day. Thank you so much for joining us in this activity.